Hi, my name is Sage, and this week I decided I wanted to make a mouse in a mushroom house, but then I decided no, I want to make a mouse with a backpack and a walking stick, but with a paper mache tree trunk. And so to get started, I'm gonna need some tinfoil, clay, a wooden base, and some wire. And I start by getting some tinfoil and scrunching it up. But then I think, what if instead of making the mouse first, I make the tree trunk first? So then I completely disregarded this little chunk and start on making the tree trunk. And I start by taking some tinfoil and folding it up hot dog style, before then making it round and then taking the hot glue and hot gluing both ends together. Then once that's done, I then scrunch up some more tinfoil and smush it on the inside to make the meat of the tree trunk, I guess. I don't know what else to— oh, wood. So once that's all filled in, I then fold up a piece of tinfoil to make it really flat, as this will be the bottom of the tree trunk, and then I forgot to press record, so just imagine that I glued it on. Next, I scrunch up some more tinfoil and then hot glue that onto the tree trunk, as these will be the tree roots. And I continue to do this all the way around the tree until there's 4. Before then deciding I'm gonna give my mouse some legs, and to do that I'm gonna cut some wire. I then use some tinfoil and then wrap it around the wire and the tinfoil ball itself so everything is nice and secure. So now that his little leggies are good to go, I then decide I'm gonna wrap his legs in tinfoil as well, because the clay will have a better time sticking to it. And speaking of clay, I then cover his entire body. And you may be like, oh my goodness, everything is covered now. Wrong! I forgot mice, in fact, do have arms, so I'm gonna add them now. And in order to do that, I take some tinfoil, scrunch it up, and then just push it into the clay that is already on his body before then covering both arms with clay themselves. Then I move on to giving him some feet, and don't get attached because I redo his feet so many times. And here I'm convinced that I'm gonna put the mouse up top of the tree trunk, and plot twist, I don't in the end. I then move on to working on his face, and his face stays ugly for a very long time, so we're just all gonna have to deal with that as a collective. This is very much trust the process, and then eventually everything works out. And this is where I give him more of a cranium, because obviously he's a smart mouse. Ooh. Then I get completely sidetracked and decide I'm gonna scrunch up some tinfoil so then I can make him a backpack. And to do that, I put some clay over top of it, and then I pinch the top to make some little flyaways. Ooh. I then blend everything out, and I make the edges a little bit more edgier, before then pressing the backpack into his back to see if he stands up, and he does. Next, I decide to make his walking stick, but of course, I don't keep the walking stick because I am indecisive, so we're gonna speed run through this. So to get started, I wrap up the wire in tinfoil and give it a base in tinfoil as well. I then cover it in clay before then running the ball stylus up and down to make some wooden textures, before then adding some branches and then also blending them into that. Next, I begin to work on the straps of the backpack by chaotically rolling my rolling pin and flattening everything out. I then use my pointy stylus to cut some straps, and since I don't measure anything ever at all, nothing was the correct size. They were all short, but it ended up being okay because I had the extra straps. So I sliced them up, and bam, you couldn't even tell. Who needs math? Next, I do some blending to make everything look good, and then I also add a little bit more clay up top the straps just to make them a little bit thicker. And once that's all done, I decide to test him to see if he can stand up, and he can't. Oh no. So I decided what would remedy this? Giving him some hands, because that makes sense. So I start off by giving him some little fingers by rolling some little logs, and don't get attached to any of this because they also get torn off later as well. And this is where I decide, you know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna put the mouse and the walking stick together because the walking stick could help him balance. But I was wrong. The walking stick is going over his foot, it's too big at the base, it's clunky, I hate it. But at this point, I'm still determined to make it work. So I make the base a little bit smaller, and I also extend his arm out a little bit more, so then I have to add some more clay to his arm because it's extended. Then I think, what if it's his height? What if it's because his feet are so thin? So then I add some more clay to his feet as well. But even doing all these things still don't solve the problem that the mouse and the walking stick are still having difficulty fitting into the tree trunk, so I decide to completely ignore that and decide to work on his face instead. Before then taking off his foot, because obviously obviously I wasn't vibing with that foot. And then I work on his hand, and then I decide, you know what, I don't want him to hold the walking stick anymore. I'm over it. Then I really commit and pull off both feet because I didn't like them. And that was the end of that story. And since he keeps falling backwards, I decide I'm gonna give him a bit of a tummy. Ooh. And I use my ball stylus to blend everything out, but since I'm me, I get distracted multiple times and start blending out other various things as well. And this is where I think it's a brilliant idea to give him elf shoe feet, because that makes sense. I randomly give him the palm of one of his hands before then moving on to making his tail. And to do that, I cut some wire, wrap it up in tinfoil, and then put clay over top of it. And I'm also thinking that this will help him balance, but then I run into the problem that it doesn't fit in the tree trunk. So then I decide I'm just gonna scrunch it up a little bit, but then it's also too long because I don't measure things, so then I cut it, and instead of putting him back in the tree trunk, I get distracted and start to blend it out. And then when I do put him back in the tree trunk, I realize that I should hot glue more of the tree trunk, so that's what I do. Because what if he's having trouble standing up because it's an uneven surface? Even though I know that's not the problem, because he's having difficulty standing up on a flat surface, but this is what I'm telling myself. I then decide, you know what, I don't like this hand anymore, and I take it off. Next, obviously, I need to work on his backpack straps because that's what makes complete sense, right? Obviously. Next, I decide to do some detailing on the straps because it makes complete sense because I work with soft clay and it's not like anything's gonna disappear over time. And everything holds its shape so well. And now I'm back to working on his hand. Ooh, and this is the hand that stays. And just like the first one, I end up rolling little logs to make his fingers. And I continue this process onto the other hand as well. His fingers turn out a little funky, but it's okay. I fix them. And this is where I have a vision to give him a dagger, because obviously my little mouse guy needs a dagger, and I do so by rolling 2 little logs and then placing them like a baby T, and boom, dagger. Oh, and I also take another little log and I put that on the back so the blade is between 2 of them before then blending it all out. Next, I put the dagger in his hand and it fits, and I'm happy, excited, wonderful, amazing. And now I get to work what's going to be in his other hand, and I decide to give him a potion bottle, so I take some tin foil, roll that up in clay, then I make a little log for the neck of the potion bottle, take my ball stylus, and blend the neck to the body of the potion bottle, before then press the little ball part into the top of the log, and then making a little ball for the stopper. And now I get to put the potion bottle into his hand, so now he's holding a dagger and a potion bottle. Next, I give him some ear divots before giving him some really long toes for absolutely no reason, and we're going to ignore them. And this is where I decide to work on his face some more, so I give him some chubbier cheeks to make him look more like a mouse, and I blend them all in with my ball stylus before then also touching up his forehead, before then going back and adding a little bit more clay just here and there on his cheeks. And I also take out his eyes because they're just getting squished and squashed because I'm just going in with the ball stylus. Next, I build up his cranium because obviously he's super smart, as mentioned before, and I'm just doing some blending, making everything a little bit more smoother while also adding more clay just here and there, as I said before, until eventually he starts to look like a mouse. And now that he be looking all creature-like, I then remove parts of his toes because they're just too long. I also use my pointy stylus to make them a little bit more individual before then putting him back in the log because I'm still convinced he's gonna fit there. And I mean, he does, but it's still kind of squished and I don't like it. But then I give him some eyes so then he can see, and then I give him the 2 little small toes that mice have on their sides. I don't know if they're called dew claws or not, but I give him those before then deciding, you know what, I'm not going to use the small wooden base, I'm going to use a big wooden base, and I'm going to put the mouse beside the tree trunk instead of on top, and now I'm going to make a bunch of little small things. And the first small thing that I make is another potion bottle, because obviously he's a magic mouse. Next, I take some tinfoil, some clay, and I smush it all around before then taking my ball stylus and hitting it because I'm making a rock. Next, I get some more tinfoil, some more clay, and then I roll it in my hands to make a little log shape before before then taking another piece of clay and flatten it out and put that up top of the log shape because I'm making a mushroom. And I used my ball stylus to give it some texture before then putting it on the tree trunk with the others. I then take a small flat piece of clay and then use my pointy stylus to engrave some leaf markings because obviously forests have leaves. I then make some repeats of the stuff that I've already made and also a tree branch. But that wasn't really too interesting, so I just put him in there. I then give the mouse some little touch-ups before then giving him a lower jaw because I forgot. And now he can smile, so I give him one. Then I go back to giving him some random touch-ups here and there. And now this is what he looks like, yay! And then I pop him into the oven. And now I'm on to the paper mache process. And this is what my paper mache looks like. Pause if you want to read the recipe. And I start by taking a paintbrush, dipping it into the paper mache before then slathering it on the tree trunk before then taking my ripped newspaper and placing it down up top of it. And once the newspaper is placed down, I then slather another layer of the paper mache up top of it so it's sandwiched. And the reason why I use blue food coloring is just because it's easier to see on camera if there's food dye in it. And look, there's a little heart that appeared and I wanted to show it. Isn't it cute? And since I have the too much gene and I put way too much paper mache on it, I then go in with some paper towel and dab it all up just so it has an easier time to dry. So it goes from looking like this to this. And now that it's all dried, I then paint the tree trunk and the wooden base the same umber brown color. And I then set them aside to dry because it's gonna take a hot minute. And now the mouse and all the little things with him are completely cooled off and I can start painting. And I start by painting the mouse a reddish brown color because I want him to be a reddish brown color. Why? I don't know. I just didn't want to paint him gray because I was like, that's sad, you know? And once the first coat is done, I then place him aside. I move on to painting the mushrooms red. Ooh, and I forgot to mention that I also made mushrooms for his backpack and a leaf as well. So now I paint the mushrooms in his backpack before then moving on to painting the tree branch, and I use a different umber brown for this tree branch. And once I do the first coat on that, I then move back to the mushrooms and I paint their stems a very light yellow because I just think that makes sense. And once I'm done all that, I then move on to painting the rocks, and I paint them a gray color because obviously rocks can be whatever color they want to, and I don't think a gray rock is sad. I think a gray rock is rad. Then I move on to painting the two leaves that I have, and I paint them green because obviously green, flourishing, it's summer. Next, I move on to painting the loose potion bottle a light purple because purple is magical, and then I also paint the stopper a gold color. And now I go back to the mouse and I end up painting his feet, his hands, his tail, his ears, and his nose, all the color pink. I then set him aside to dry before then moving back to all the little things, and I give them all a second coat, and I give the mushrooms some little white spots. And now I move back to the mouse again, and I give him a second coat of the reddish brown color, but leaning more into the brown, and then I give everything that's pink also a second layer as well. So now that he's looking fabulous, it's time to paint his backpack, and I decided to go with the green color, and I'm mixing this color myself, so there are some discrepancies. But just like everything else, this is also gonna need 2 layers, so transition. So now that its backpack is completely painted, I then decide to move onto his dagger, and I use a cheaper paint for this because I wanted it to be shimmery. Then I decide, you know what, I'm not gonna deal with that right now. I'm gonna go back to the tree trunk and give it some more life to it by giving it some more shades of brown. And my main focus is to get all the edges with the paint and the nooks and crannies just to make sure everything is nice and covered. I then accidentally painted his dagger off screen. I had it up to my camera and everything, it's just I forgot to press record. But now I move on to painting his eyes, and I just do 1 coat of black because I just think that's all that they need. So now that they're painted, I then go in and do the potion bottle that he's holding, and I do a light green color because I feel like he's a happy mouse with happy potions. And because I really like purple, I decide to paint the stopper purple as well as the dagger handle because why not? And now that they're both looking good, I go back to the dagger and go over it with the shimmery silver all over again just to kind of give it more shimmer. To be honest, I just like sparkly things. I then use the butt of the paintbrush and dip that into paint, and then I use that to make the circle highlights for the mouse's eyes. Next, I paint the inside of his mouth black. I was gonna do pink, but I think that would take away from everything, so I went with black instead. And now we're moving on to the gluing part. I use Gorilla Gorilla Glue to glue the tree trunk to the wooden base. Next, I also use Gorilla Glue to glue down the mushroom, the rock, and the loose potion bottle onto the tree trunk. I then repeat this process but on the wooden base. So I start with the little mushroom before then moving on to the branch, the rock, the leaf, and then finally the mouse himself. And now that everything is adhered, it's now time to hot glue the moss on. And I do that by just putting hot glue on the base and then smushing the moss on. And that's pretty much about it. So I would just like to say thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. And now it's time for the glamour shots.